The last one here, and we talked on this a little bit, but this is maybe a little bit more practical, moving towards more practical, and next time we'll get very practical. And we touched on this a little bit, but the timing of everything is really important. That's what one of our colleagues had mentioned this, that as she was thinking about doing the last couple of weeks of going remote, that it's just a completely different way of thinking. That a lot of times we have, what am I going to do on Monday? What am I doing Wednesday? And she noted that, well, actually it's more kind of weekly. Like I need to be thinking not only daily, but I need to be thinking of chunks of like weeks and units and those sorts of things. And I think that could work too in a face-to-face, right? So Sam, we'd mentioned this a little bit previously, but you think, like when you do your classes, you think more in terms of like units rather than like weeks or something. What's sort of behind the philosophy of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so this week I got an email from a faculty member, and they're anxious about setting up. We have a new learning management system. They're anxious about setting up their class, and so I can hear in just the tone of an email, without even talking to the individual, that they already have a preconceived way in which they're going to structure their class and the setup of their class. They just need to figure out in Populi what buttons to click and what link to insert and that sort of stuff, so they can keep doing the same thing that they've always been doing in our previous learning management system. But yeah, instead of thinking about, okay, so we go back to the beginning, what are our outcomes? So what kind of assessment, what kind of activities we're going to bring into this course? Then I need to think about the timing of that. So we talk about scope and we talk about sequence in educational theory. And so the sequencing of that is very key to the types of activities and outcomes that we have for our class and the way that we're assessing those. And so in some cases, it may be better, because online is predominantly asynchronous, to move into a unit format, which is not limited by specific days or number of days. And so, for example, I have a class that has 10 days. I set 10 days as that. As for each unit. Now it lessens the number of units. Instead of having 15 weeks across the semester, I may end up with only maybe 11 or 12 units across the whole of the semester. But I'm discovering that with asynchronous learning, that students need more time to want to get the information, deal with the content, reflect on that, discuss with others, and produce. And we've already mentioned that. So a unit structure may work a little bit more effectively along the lines of just a specific week, 7 days. We do a lot of ministry training, for example, and so we have senior pastors who are in our MDiv program or doctoral programs, and it's impossible for them to turn in an assignment on Sunday night. Are you kidding me? They just went through a whole day of ministry, and you're expecting them to turn in something on a Sunday night. No, so we give them a little bit more freedom within their schedule based on a unit structure. So I've just found that that the cool thing about online learning, a little bit different than face-to-face, is you have a lot more flexibility in designing your course around topics or units, not just on a week-by-week kind of basis.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm going to share my screen here. This I found out that according to like best practices in online learning, that you think not necessarily going from a Monday through Friday type thing, but the week actually starts on Tuesday and it ends that next Monday, which sort of, it doesn't seem like that would really make sense. But I've found when I started doing this, the students have thanked me a lot because, okay, now I can sort of use that weekend to catch up. And so what I do is I have like on Tuesdays, that's where the week starts. It starts on the Tuesday, and whatever like content there is, we start this, we can do the connection activities. So they have like Tuesday to Thursday to make their initial response. And then Friday to that next Monday is that turns into sort of the more peer evaluation stuff. And so actually able to have them. So once it kind of gets into that sync, syncing of the sync of this, that rhythm, it has really helped quite a bit in being able to help them use that weekend, not like I've got to do all my work on the weekend and turn it in on Sunday or whatever, but then you have that next kind of a buffer day of a Monday. And also as a teacher, that's helped me quite a bit, because that means I've got Monday now. I kind of know where everything is, but that gives me that whole day of Monday to kind of gather everything, make sure everything's in the right place. And I don't have to worry about doing that on like a Sunday night or something.
I was going to say before, sorry. As a student, what I found was really helpful was, as my courses were outlined in these modules, but like they would help me organize within that module. Week 1, they would put a note in, I want you to watch the intro video. I want you to read these 3 things. I don't really want you to do much else. I want you just to kind of sit in that. And then week 2, there's a whole lot of dialogue. And week 3, we kind of work on some kind of summative assessment, whether that's a paper or just meeting in groups or whatever we do. But by that 3rd week, we've engaged for 2 weeks. We've talked to our peers. But the nice thing is, it's like the talking about the flexibility. It's like your summative is due no later than just this date. Like I can turn it in anytime, but I have until this date. So it's not, I have a firm, but it's not like you only have this time to do it. I can then begin to organize my own week around those drop dead dates, so to speak. But the way the modules are set out, where someone says, you've just finished this summative big project and we're moving to the next module. So that week 1 of the module is always this breathing week. Relax, just read something. There's nothing due. I don't have to turn in anything for a week. And that feels so good when you've come off of working, nights and weekends to try to get something done. So being flexible in how we approach when things are due, and how we even help students, like that schedule you just showed kind of sparked in me how much I really appreciate when they lay out week 1, just do this, week 2, do this. And I know that if week 1, like I have so much work, like if I'm doing a big project here, I can probably put off some of that week 1 work to week 2, and it's not going to harm too much. Like I'm an adult, like I can start to gauge when things can be messed around with. And it just gives me a little bit of freedom. It gives me the flexibility as a student not to feel overwhelmed, and to still engage in content with my peers and all of that. So flexibility, helping them by giving our students some form of way to schedule their own learning. Because if they're 100% online, it really helps to know, this is what I would, if I were you, I'd read this week. If I were you, I'd talk to my peers week 2. And by week 3, I'd be working on that assessment that I'm going to ask you to do. I think that helps.
Because one of the big things that I heard from students, like when I asked them as we were getting into the online stuff, it's like, how can I help you? What are you most nervous about? What are you scared about? All that kind of stuff. And almost all of them said, I don't know what's expected. I don't know when things are due. I don't know what's going to be due. And so kind of what I do is I just make this chart. Like, here's the stuff we're doing. We're not doing everything in the world. Like, there's a lecture and there's a short quiz to take, there's an activity, these are the 2 basic activities, and then we're going to do a voice thread. And so if they can see that graphically, like, oh, okay, that's just a couple things to do. All right. I can manage that. But if they're not really able to even find it, like it's obscure list somewhere, or it's in a calendar and it's, but I found that students said that they really appreciate just simplicity, like just make it easy. I can look at it, give me a checklist, and then able to move on.
And that's the key. I mean, what you're bringing up is that whether you're doing weeks, topics, or units, it doesn't matter, as long as there's consistency there, and consistency in communication with the student, so that they know exactly what's happening. Because they may have one online class that uses a strict week model. They may have another class that uses topics. Maybe that topic is carried over 2 weeks, and so they need to be informed of that. Or they have a unit progression, built on a 10 or a 12-day kind of unit progression. But the key is informing your students up front, letting them know exactly what the expectations are for each one of those. And especially in online, we may mention this a little bit later when we're talking about videos, is that if they can see the instructor's face, if you're doing a video overview of those week's topics or units, is vitally important. if you're sharing your desktop with them, your screen with them, so see in the syllabus how it's laid out or whatever. The more information, the better in those upfront, communicates to your students.
If our goal is to see students be successful, we can never assume they own a skill set like they're extremely organized. We need to help them, right? So if the goal is about student success, then we need to help in any way we can, give tools within the course itself. Not, there's always boundaries to accountability and all of that, but it's not wrong of us to offer that kind of organizational help, because not everybody owns those skills, and it does keep them from being successful even when they can handle the content. So I just kind of look at it from that perspective. It's about student success too.
Yeah.
So I have a question for the group about the length of the unit. So Kent, you talked in terms of a week, Sam, 10 days, and Jen, you talked about a 3-week cycle. Do you feel like it's more important to establish a regular rhythm in your class, whether it's a week, 10 days, or 3 weeks? Or is it more important to take an accordion approach where the subject that you're addressing may stretch a unit out longer? Do you think it's better for the students to be in a rhythm, or better to adjust based on our topic?
I'll tackle this one. It depends. How's that for an answer? You're starting with your course outcomes. Some courses fit better with different parameters of time. And so one of the classes I teach, my modules are like 5 weeks. Like there's huge chunks where I design online to be, there's just a bunch of stuff in a big sense of time. Another class, the class that Jen and I co-teach, it's more like a potpourri of stuff. We're on this topic for 2 days. We're on this one for 1. We're on this topic for a day and a half, and then another day and a half for this one. And so a module, or even a week by week time frame doesn't even make sense for that. So the simple answer, which is not simple to your question, Greg, is it depends on your course. It depends on the outcomes you have and what you need and want students to do. And you have flexibility in that. I would say that it's beneficial to students to have a pattern, to have a rhythm. So if you look at your course content and outcomes, you're like, you know what, we can do 5 3-week modules, and then the rhythm of those modules is the same. That's awesome. That's really helpful to students. Your content might not allow for that. And so in that sense, maybe it's a week, or maybe it's 10 days, or maybe like the class Jen and I have, it's even broken down from that. The nice thing about Populi is that it allows you to create lessons that can be varying lengths of time. So if you do want to do the accordion approach, you could have this lesson is for this week, but then this lesson is for the next 15 days. And then we're going to do a lesson that's kind of a standalone, and it's just, Monday to Wednesday. And then you're going to have the rest of the week off to give that break that you need. And then we're going to start over there. I don't think that's necessarily ideal, because students have more things to keep track of. But if your course content lends itself to that, go that direction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
I would say too that the consistency in communicating with your students, that's going to be key. For example, you may have the same student in 2 of your courses, but each course is structured differently. And they may even ask you, well, why are you using 10-day unit structure over here, and then you've got a week model over here? As long as you're consistent with that, and you can explain, well, based on the outcomes for this kind of course, the kind of assessment that we're looking for, it's just structured differently, and you need to get used to that. Even thinking about the students, there's generational differences. If we're teaching graduate students, some of those may be Gen Xers, maybe even busters, maybe even boomers, who knows? And then you got Gen Z mixed in there. And it's like, who's going to adapt where? So some generational theory certainly applies in here, as well as students' abilities to engage. So you need some sort of consistency there, but allowing for the flexibility is kind of a key as well, like Jen was talking about earlier.
Yeah. I think communication is just the absolute most important piece of it. I have students that have 2 classes with me back to back. Each class is ordered differently. One is far more a week by week topic, and the other one is modules up to 3 weeks long. But I make it super explicit. This module, it'll say 2 weeks at the top in the heading so that they know this is a 2-week module. I want to make sure that they see things. I communicate that this is going to be a longer module. This is going to be a shorter one. And we put it in print and we talk. So it's just communication in order to help our students be successful. And I do think it is all about the content, what your content needs, and what your students need to engage in that content.
Just like in a face-to-face class, and maybe this is more for the P12 world, but you have procedures. When you come in room, you put your backpack in your cubby, you take your coat off, and you put it over here. You go sit at the desk and you start doing the work that's on the board. And then when everybody's here, when the bell rings or whatever, we're going to start. There's those rhythms and patterns that need to exist in remote learning so that students know where to find things. They know how to turn them in. They know first, like Sam, or Jen, in your 3-week, the first week is this, the second week is this. As much as you can create those policies, those routines, those procedures, just like you would in a face-to-face class, turn your papers in the bin by the door, however it is. Try to create those patterns of consistency in remote learning too, because it will help your students be successful, especially the ones that aren't organized. The ones that are organized, they'll figure it out for themselves. It's the students that aren't organized that need that structure and guidance to be successful in your class. So Greg, like you. No.
So do you feel the flexibility in an online setting to say, the class is really struggling, we're going to extend this unit another week?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly what Jen was talking about, communicating to your students. You're like, they're just not getting this. They're struggling. Or maybe, maybe half the class, their internet went down or whatever. You got to be flexible with it and say, we're going to extend this over a little bit more time, or I'm going to allow a little bit more time for you to reflect more. Even if you received an assignment, I've had to do that with classes where they turn an assignment in, and by and large for the whole class, it was just garbage. And it's like, okay, either I didn't communicate effectively, I didn't have the appropriate activities or engagements. And so we'll take a whiff on that. We're going to revisit this and we're going to restructure it in a different sort of way. Don't have flexibility. But again, being upfront with your communication and letting them know that that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And then, the art of teaching is to have we keep coming back to outcomes, but they're so important in a moment like that, because there's time that is being spent to reteach something that you didn't plan for. So something has to give, which is fine. It's really not a problem, but based on your outcomes, you prioritize. When I look what's coming next, okay, I can shrink this. We don't need to read this source. We don't need to watch this. Students don't need to do this, because it's more important that they get this information and get it well so that they can do something with it later on, again, based on the outcomes. And so being able to have that big picture again and know I can spend a little time here, but I have to steal it from over here, and then being able to cut what is non-essential, I guess. And that's all based on your course outcomes and the big picture of what your course is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it wreaks havoc for that faculty member that has it specifically laid out, and then their midterm exam has all the questions related to the content that they've laid out. And it's like, goodness gracious, if you're not in the habit or the business of revamping your exams, every one of them based on language, then I think by and large you might have missed something in the way in which you're engaging students. I mean, they stone me for that, but
that's true.
Wow. Well, this is good. I think we've covered a lot of area, and I think we've a lot of really good ideas. And next time we can talk about maybe some more specifics. We had sort of targeted this idea of, video and podcast, but I think we could definitely expand that, because one of the things I still need help with personally are things like forums, how to do really engaging forums that make everybody want to be involved with this, because it's probably not a good idea to say, what did you think of the reading? That's probably not a good prompt.
I liked it.
Good. I don't know. And so there are probably better prompts and worse prompts, and even just the practical stuff in a classroom, so we'll look at like how to, maybe some ideas about video podcasting, and then I think also forums, things like that. And then maybe if we could all bring, Jen had mentioned a tool that she uses, Padlet. Is that right? Yeah. And so maybe we could do like a pick of the week type thing where we could bring our favorite show and tell, like this is a killer app, and it's really helped a lot, or it's something I want to try. But cool. Well, thank you guys for participating, and we will chop this up and put it up on our page, and we will get a lot of money from YouTube because there will be advertisers wanting to get in on our brilliance. And so.
Exactly.
Excellent, for sure.
And we'll have to plan a trip to Hawaii. Too bad we don't have a class on that. We could, yeah.
That would be real relevant assessment of this course.
And we market it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys, and go enjoy the rain.